Um, I've talked about quite a bit of things on my YouTube channel, and one thing that's always been of interest to me is about ghosts. And I've shared many things on YouTube of experiences that I've had over the years of seeing ghosts. And one of the things that only my mother could really share with you, but I don't really think she would want to right now, but I might try to, is when we lived in College Park, she bought an original Ouija board from Parker Brothers back in 1973, 1974. And there was a neighbor who was right in front of us, and she had I guess, the clairvoyant ability to detect things through the Ouija board. And my mother and her would get together once a week, mostly on the weekends because that's when they were off. And they would together in the dark do sort of like half seance, half Ouija board inquiries, asking questions of things that they wanted answered. One particular thing was the fact that this went on from 1976 until 1979, and just before my mother moved to Florida with all of us, she got together with this friend, and they asked the Ouija board what would happen to her when she left College Park to go to Florida. And the Ouija board answered her and said, "You will find another job." It told her where she would be working at a VA hospital, or at least that it said she would work for a hospital or something to that effect. And it named down to the entire doctor, except for one letter, the individual she would actually be assigned to when she first started with the Veterans Administration. His name was, I think the Ouija board said Fong, and it was Wong. So instead of F-O-N-G, it was W-O-N-G. So the Ouija board had it down to every character of his name except for the first letter. And sadly, it did not say much about what would happen to the rest of our family, maybe because my mother didn't think to ask, would any of our children be injured or killed. But I have to also mention this. Leanne was my sister, and she had a very, very close friend who lived on our street. Her name was Allison Harris. Allison was very much like my mother's friend. She had a clairvoyant ability as well. She had like extrasensory perception of things. And I remember one day we were in the carport of our house, and we were talking, and Leanne had asked her questions about what would happen to us now that we were moving to Florida. And I remember Allison saying to her, "You're going to be in an accident," but Allison said that she felt Leanne would survive the accident. Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe she said to Leanne confidentially that she would die, because in the years since Leanne died, I have attempted to contact Allison. She lives in Florida too, but I'm not quite sure anymore where. But every time I've written to her, I have never gotten an answer. And I don't think it's the fact that she doesn't know how to answer. Maybe it's the fact that she said something to Leanne that she always regretted saying, or maybe that she knew something Lee something would happen to her, and Allison did not feel ever comfortable talking about it with me, because I've just gone out of my way to try to ask her what did she share with Leanne when she was still living in College Park, and she won't talk. And it's been almost 40 years since, and she still won't say anything to me, even to this day. So I respect her feelings, but we're not getting any younger, and sooner or later I'm sure she probably will get to the age where she'll feel kind of like, I should have said something, but I never did. And it'll be too late, you know. So if any of her friends see the video, or if anybody who knows Allison in Florida, tell her that it's better her to come full circle and give it closure and tell somebody in the family, me or my mother, of what happened or what she might have said to Leanne, rather it be that she goes on in her life and forgets it, or tries to make herself believe that there was nothing that happened then. But I have shared also in my experiences of ghosts, but I feel like never really had said it point blank on camera before. So I decided I would share it on this video. When we went to Freeport, and this is in Nova Scotia, Canada, back in 1973, I was only 7 years old, and my parents would not take me or my sister up to this old house that my father knew a man who worked for United Airlines, and he went with us with his wife and kids to see his adopted father. And anyway, when we got up there, he had told us several different things about the community there. It's a very small coastal town or village on a, really it's an isolated island. In Freeport, at least in the 70s, all they had was just fishing and a cannery, which is basically all of the merchants brought fish and then they canned it and processed it and then sold it to the mainland. And that's what he did. And when we met him, he lived in a really modern looking house. You know, it was really nice looking on the island, but you could tell he really did have limitations of what he could get. And I remember when we got to his house, I was enthralled with, he had a whole pile in the backyard of just hubcaps of different cars that I guess he had collected over the years, and I wanted to bring them back with me, but I never did. And I'm just going to give an overview of this visit, but one thing distinctive that would probably interest a lot of people who are comic strip fanatics, I met the artist who used to draw for Chick Young, who was the originator of Blondie. And of course his son Dean Young now draws the comic strip, but when Chick Young got ill back in the mid to late 1960s, United King Feature Syndicate, or United Feature Syndicate, whoever owns it, they started to hire secondary freelance artists to take over Chick's work. And this artist, who was drawing Blondie at the time, was living on the island of Freeport at the time when we were visiting. His name was Paul Fung, F-U-N-G. He lived partially during the year on Freeport, and then he lived also in a rural area of New York. It was called Greenwich. And anyway, he actually was also an illustrator for the newspaper in Greenwich. And in the years after we met him, Paul Fung saw an actual apparition in a rectory, and he drew an illustration that they used in the article. And he claimed it was a spirit, but it wasn't the friar of that particular rectory, or that he did not sense that it was benevolent. I mean, he felt that it was somebody who was haunting the rectory who didn't find peace, and that he was going upstairs and he saw the apparition at a window, and it turned and it looked at him. And anyway, beyond that, Chick Young was so sick that it was Paul Fung who was doing Blondie. And anyway, he drew me a picture of the dog, Daisy, from Blondie on my birthday. I had just turned 7, and I still have it to this day. And Paul Fung's experience always stuck out in my mind because I kept thinking this guy has seen something that so few people ever have seen, and he was lucky enough as an illustrator that he could put it down visually so that people could really see a good interpretation of what a specter looks like, an apparition looks like. If you want to see the picture, I have it posted on my YouTube channel. It's under the term rectory haunted by specter or something to that effect, and I had kept the article from the Greenwich News that he mailed to my father because they were friends after that. And getting back to Freeport, because that's pretty much all I can tell you about that story, is when my sister and I and my father's friends, their children were left with me and my sister at the house, the adopted father took his adopted son and his wife and my parents up to this house. And the house was owned by a local fisherman. His name was Carmen Nass. And they went up there to the house one night. Okay, it was after dark, so you know how spooky it was, because on these coastal islands it gets foggy at night a lot of times, and I can just imagine what my father was feeling, because he got up to the house and it was already abandoned. He had died roughly 10 years before in 1963, so this man's wife and him said, you can take anything you want in the house, because nobody was living there and it wasn't actually occupied by anybody. So my father broke out one of the windows and he went into the house, and there were 2 sea lamps, and he took one of them. And all of this is on my YouTube channel too. You'll see photographs of it. And there was actually a photograph of an orb that was photographed in the house. And I believe strongly that it was the spirit of Carmen Nass who was still in that house. But anyway, they took the sea lamp back to the house, and when we left to come back to the United States, back to Georgia, we brought the lamp on the airplane in the storage hold of the aircraft, you know, in the baggage section, in just a regular cardboard box. And when we got the box home, it had no packing, so we figured it's probably been shattered, because part of the sea lamp was glass. It was totally untouched. It was perfect, just exactly the same way as when they took it out of the house. And then when, about maybe not even a month later, we began experiencing things in the house. Now this house we're talking about, we lived in from the day it was built. Nobody else ever lived there before us. Nobody had ever lived in the house before us. And one night we're all downstairs, because it was a 2-story home, and we started hearing footsteps upstairs. And we all looked at each other and we thought, well, we're all down here, so who is upstairs in the upstairs? So my father ran up there to see who it was. He comes back down and says, there's nobody up there. And I was scared. I was thinking, I don't think I want to go to bed tonight because I'm hearing footsteps. So anyway, we did go to bed. We didn't experience anything else. I didn't hear any more footsteps, or if I did, I don't remember. And then a week or so, or after that, my mother was upstairs getting ready for bed, and she walked in the hallway upstairs where this lamp was. They'd put it right at the end of the hallway. And she felt something in front of her. It felt really cold and damp. And she said it felt like you were underwater. That's how cold it was. And she said, I felt like somebody was standing there in front of me. She felt a presence in the hallway, but she never saw anybody. And then the last experience of this whole experience of seeing this individual was my own. I was in bed with my parents. It was a thunderstorm one night, and I was real scared of the lightning, and I asked them if I could sleep with them. So I'm in bed with them between my parents. And about 2 o'clock, maybe 3 o'clock in the morning, I wake up. And the rain had already stopped, and the lightning had stopped because the storm had already moved out. And I looked in the hallway because my parents left the door open, and I saw somebody. And it was a ghost. It was somebody standing there. He had a hat on his head, and you could see some distinctive features of the eyes and the mouth. And he just floated into my view, and he stood there and looked at me, and I pinched myself. I wanted to see whether I was experiencing this or if it was a dream, and I pinched myself, and I said, I'm not dreaming. And then he floated on down the hallway, and I knew then I had seen the ghost of that fisherman from Freeport, Carmen. So that's my experiences of ghosts. Thanks.